This one, which this title and such a mandate, because I've been, engaging with so many sites across the country and been very fortunate to work with, the best landscape architects or planners and engineers and urban designers. And I often and repeatedly find that there are certain things that happen on sites all the time. And those things that happen all the time, uh, repeatedly, are actually very disturbing and then actually also devastating for the site. Um, and if we all had certain tools, and if we all were aware of some of these issues, if I stop in between, that means people are joining still. If we were aware of some of these issues, we can actually prevent, uh, reduce, and mitigate these damages. So prevention can happen as part of the planning and design process. Reduction can happen if we become a little bit more aware, and mitigation can happen as part of the construction and execution and post execution, um, because these are very very important issues and they have great consequences on the site. So this presentation is divided into three parts. In the first part, I will take you through the importance of understanding soil and water on site, because soil and water, can you see the slide? Mohsin, can you see the slide with the one person? Can you? So can you see the next slide? Uh, you guys there? Okay, great. So, it's that these are the two essentials for life, and the rapidity at which both the soil is deteriorating and water is vanishing, it's we are heading towards a crisis. Uh, while we understand the primary reason for that is agriculture, for the loss of a huge amount of soil and water from the sites, but as architects, let us understand where we might be goofing up and how we can probably mitigate them. So I'll take you through three very small slides. Uh, Even if we have bare amount of soil available, when it will first rain, the grasses will begin to come and small perennials will begin to come. And the process of erosion and destruction will start to reverse very slowly and over a long period of time, which you can see over here. And this is the dilemma that I face consequently every time there's any project on site. The site gets completely derelict by the time we architects leave it. And that's between 1 to 2 years. Once the building is done, literally the site, soil, and water system is completely damaged. And to reverse it to this, that is the amount of time frame it will take. Even to bring it to this, that is the amount of time it will take if it was to follow the natural progression. We can expedite this, and expedite means we have to add more resources, and resources in form of energy, time, material, money, and you will not get to that point. And for this natural progression to happen, it takes huge amount of time for it to go back to this stage. There are different kinds of cycle after cycle that happen within the system, within any given system, within the grass system, within a shrub system. There are many other life forms, millions of them, that exist. And by the time as architects we tamper around, these systems are finished forever. And a project cycle lasts for 2 years, and the architect is out, the landscape architect is out, the site is literally finished and dead. So on one hand, while the soil is such an important aspect, the water system that exists is kind of damaged completely. Water is a system, and we will look at it further with soil. And when there is water, we begin to have some form coming up back to life. And what's important to understand that primarily, except in Chennai and some other parts of the country, we are primarily dependent on the summer rains, the monsoon rains in this country. So it's like this. You are only earning barely 2 months in a year. And with what you get in those 2 months in a year, you have to survive for the remaining 10 more months. But during those 10 more months, we are devastating, fragmenting, killing, extracting, not working with what we got in those 2 months. It's important to understand the fact that literally almost all of the world's drinking water can be stored in a cube if we were to make it on top of Bangalore. That's all there is. And that water, each one of us wants a share of it. And that water then also goes from one state to another, from one country to another. So I realized this. It took me a while. It took me a while to understand. And over the last 15 years, I've been trying to do workshops for students and professionals and everyone. At the end of the day, it's concluded that the 5 years of training of an architect, we do not understand really nothing about the land, soil, geology, water, vegetation, air, wild, nothing. Literally, as architects, we are the consumers of the natural resources. We put it together on a site. And a site to us, we will come to that later. We never thought that there's a site above the building, there's a site on the building, there is a site around the building, there is a site below the building. They're all part of the site, but never do we are trained to understand this dichotomy. We'll come to this project a little later, and this will be a case study of what not to do. So in other words, while the architect is the prime consultant, the prime mover, but the training of the architect is devoid of understanding the different dimensions and layers of site. But yet we go and plonk a building on a site without knowing what is this blue, without knowing what is this brown, What is below this brown? What is behind this building? What is here? We have no idea. Very basic idea, but really not an idea with which we can work. So then the question is, who should design on the land? If we don't know, if we are not trained, or if our training doesn't give us the tools to work efficiently, then should the ecologist design, or a naturalist, or a biologist, or an agriculturist, horticulturist, geologist, hydrogeologist, soil scientist? Who should design first or at all? Because we all agree in the 5 years of architectural training or an urban designer, we are not taught any of this stuff. Yet we do master planning as an architect. Yet we put buildings together on a site. We are trained only to design this individual building. So what happens consequently because of the lack of sensitivity and training? While the architect in this country is primarily the first person to be hired by the client. Then the architect hires an MEP. If there is money, a landscape architect. If there is money, a PMC. Then there's a team that will execute it. And then there's a project brief which is already there. So we will come to that. What is the role of the landscape architect when the water is completely depleting, when the soil is impoverished completely. 60% of soil is impoverished, and when we walk in, we finish off the remaining organic content in the site, and we will share with you what happened. So consequently, each time an architect touches, including me, it has taken me years to understand, but all my sites I'm still not be able to do because the kind of cooperation that is required doesn't exist. So eventually, to me, a site is like an orphan baby. It's like an orphan baby. Why? Because the architect, because of the lack of training in this field, doesn't take it up on himself to be the one who will ensure that the site doesn't get destroyed. So what is happening that each one of us are fulfilling our role. And the role of this person is completely misunderstood, not understood, underutilized in this country. The job of this person is not to tell which plants to hire. The job of this person is much more and which is what we're talking about today. So each one of them plays a very small role, but no one actually literally plays the role of or the understanding of the site. And it cannot be done by one individual. And in this team, there is no one who understands that, not even this person. So what do we do and what happens? Let us look at it. So literally the site is often, unless someone steps in, that can be a client who's really concerned, that can be a landscape architect who's really concerned, or that can be a sensitive architect who may not know how to do it but wants to do it. So the other people chip in. But actually no one takes up the ownership of actually working and understanding on the site. So what I'm speaking about today is there are other people in other countries where people are talking about it. And this example is from Lancaster, where they've set up a research group where they're talking what to do about soils during planning as well as construction process to prevent its degradation. and promote its functioning. It's an issue worldwide. And we will look at it, you know, why it is an issue. So if we look at any of my sites, I'm going to talk about this particular site, which has been going on for last 4 years. We were hired on the project by an architect. Because this is a large site, it has potential for landscape, and landscape means to make it green and nice. But we don't understand the role of the landscape. Architect is primarily, and the role of each one of us is primarily to look at the site as a living system. It's just like a human body. It's alive, kicking. Like we are, if it rains on around us, we are affected, a site gets affected. When it is cold, the site gets affected. When it is hot, the site gets affected. Just like your human body, it's a living system. It is not just a place to capture views from. That's one of the things, very small item. And that the way we get affected during the summer and the winter, a site similarly gets affected. And it'll change its character. And because I've had the privilege, I would say, to travel across the whole country, work with more than 100 architects, more than 200, 500 sites across every single possible geographical area in this country and ecological area, except for the Northeast, even the Northeast. We have an understanding which is very slightly much more. So here, this is Mandu and how its character changes from brown to green to brown. That is how the cycles work. The whole cycle starts, if we take the cycle actually, when it's monsoon, it's this. By the time it's December and January, it's brown. By the time it's May, it's really almost barren. And then it waits for the monsoon. That is the cycle in which every site in this country works. It changes its character and the life changes around this. It is celebrated in poetry and in architecture. We all understand that. Then it turns brown and partly green. This is the same site, same place, on the same site, 2 different months. And because of the lack of our training, in the architecture profession, none of us understand about this. That there is a reason why this is brown and why this is green. And it's all embedded in patterns and languages on the side. It requires us to be there so much. And the reason we have been able to understand these subtleties is on any given project, we go at least 100-man days, at least, we spend on site. It changes its character and the outside of the site is a giveaway of what is happening on your site. So you will see patterns. And these patterns have got science behind it. Why this is happening here, why this is happening here, why this is happening here. It's part of the system, just like the human body. So the landscapes of forest, the landscape of agriculture, and how they change through the season, there is a science behind it. Why is agriculture happening on this bit and not somewhere else? Why? It's a very simple reason, and we will see that very simply. It will only happen in this area. Not just because it's steep, simply because in this kind of a landscape of plateau, the silt will keep coming and accumulating, one from here, other from here, and through the movement of water from here. And you get some silt every year. Otherwise, it's a plateau landscape on which it'll take about 150 years to get this forest. if you spend a little more time on this drawing, we will get an understanding of. So we will understand if we spend more time why there is green here and not in the other place. And that's what happens even on our site. So this is a giveaway that in this whole landscape which is brown, this is the site we're talking about. This whole landscape which is brown. Why is it brown here? Why is it dark brown here? Why is it less vegetation here? Why is it green and agricultural land beginning to happen? There's a whole science. Now, our training as an architect doesn't allow us to see these patterns, to see these signs, and we go and put our buildings ignorantly wherever we like. There are only two parameters that we use primarily as architects, whereas there are 15 other parameters about which we are unaware of. But people who are associated with the land, who live and work closely with the land, and in this case, the agricultural workers who become laborers on the site, understand that with almost no water available or very little water available, they are growing their own vegetables in these shacks in the most commonsensical, most intelligent manner of doing permaculture. This gives them the food that they need. It gives them insulation and protection. This crop and the other crop support each other, and it also rejuvenates the soil. Very simple, very basic, but because they know it, they have been doing it, it's very easy for them to do it, but very difficult for us to understand or even grow a little bit. So I have concluded, this is the site. This whole thing is the site that we've been talking about. And this is the view that we get from the site. So this building, I was hired after the building was done by the architect. The reason why this building is placed here is very simple, because this offered this somewhere here, I don't know, here. This offers this magnificent view. In my experience, views are only temporary and they change. During the course of the period of the project, less than 4 years, new ugly buildings came here. The primary basis on which this public building was put here, now the view needs to be hidden. This whole view needs to be hidden. But this is what is driving most of the architecture, placement and location as the primary thing. There are so many other factors which we will look at right now, which we probably don't even realize matter. So this is how the building has come out. Now, we don't understand, I'm going to take examples of certain things that are determinants. And if we don't understand that, we create huge amount of issues on the site. For instance, this building was designed, the first one, for the view. And the idea that you don't see the building, so you sink the building. But you're putting a building on a plateau and you will see the building from almost everywhere. Now, without understanding the geology of the Deccan Plateau, we sunk the building inside and made a basement. Now, this has huge consequences. It took about 1 year with the JCB to dig this. Now, this is one of the gravest problems that I face when we are working with our co-architects. is that the plinth of this building is fixed locally. We don't realize that it is a whole system. So what is the system? We will come to that. We will talk about it a little bit more. Once you fix the basement, do you understand what it does? It means that the septic, the sewage system, plumbing system will be at one floor below this, in this belt of very hard rock of geology, which means that if wastewater has to be transported, it needs to go down there, maybe 300 meters. And then you have to dig 6 meters below in this geology. Without understanding that in this geology, water does not permeate below 3 meters. It gets stuck in this top layer, which has got little cracks. That is the only water available. And if you dig anywhere in a lot of these areas, there will be water. So there are many, many such things about which we don't understand. For instance, in a project like this, the architects just wanted all the buildings to be of one height, one level. I want my site to be like this. And what happens is that most of the architects who are working are young architects, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years experience, and the prime architect doesn't have enough time to go to the site every day. And the young architect doesn't understand these subtleties, and I don't expect. So we make a 3D view and we sell it to the client. The client has bought it, after which the landscape architect might be hired or other consultants might come in. We have frozen it. We have sold the image. We are married to it. How will you ever divorce from it while realizing the fact that none of this is working? That we have not considered the geology or the soils or the structure. And that, not just that, in many of my projects, there are these images that we bring in of long buildings, tubular buildings, telescopic buildings, and we implant it. So these are all preconceived images, ideas, without actually looking at any of the site. So what happens? We'll come to that a little bit later. So how does the geology of the site affect? And what does it mean? And when should it happen as part of the planning process? So here is one small geological and hydrogeological test that we do for every site now. And I am learning still. Yeah. And this rainfall data we get for 100 years. A hydrogeological mapping we do. We try to understand what is going on. And this is the topography and what is happening below it, and what is the lithology below it. Layers, what's happening in the soil. Now, shouldn't this information come in upfront, support an architect in deciding where to put the building, height of the building, whether to have the basement or not, where to locate the building, where we can recharge the groundwater? All these conditions are not known to an architect. And then you see what we do, where we want buildings to be placed later, because this was done and we put a hold to the entire process of making of the building. These are the points where we said, let's do investigation. And then this is what tells at what depth. This is in feet, where is water impounded, and this is probably here. So luckily, because we can also understand some of this, what is happening below the ground, by looking at patterns on the soil, on the surface, and I'll tell you how. And a lot of this we will be talking about in the workshop that we do. And that workshop series will start from March for any one of you is interested. So we were able to kind of pick up these and we were almost there, but there were certain things which we only understood after getting these maps. These are the Bohr, the resistivity tests that we do in order to understand that you can't recharge ground in any of these places because the water is trapped up there. And so we are very clear that, so this geology plays a lot of, we can use it to determine even the form. And the surface hydrology, about which I'll just talk about it in a moment. So this is what you see, we dig. Because we had time on hand, this is the soil profile. Just by trying to dig for putting plants, because we knew the project will take a lot of time, you can see in some places, this is only 16-acre site, not that big. We could not even dig 1 foot. You can see everywhere you're hitting a different kind of structure, and somewhere you're hitting water. So do we understand this? Should it be important in deciding? Now, if we start putting buildings, which is what was going to happen, and then this is a giveaway that you can't dig with the normal tools on your site. So we move around on the site, we literally, I have an image of the whole site in my mind because I go there, sketch at least 15 times before I design. After I design, I test it, and then we see where the water is coming from. Before, even though the boundary wall's made, we ensure that the system is kind of still permeable to some degree. So we have to understand this aspect that the building, now let me explain to you. If I'm putting the building, which is where they had put it here, I'm deciding the plinth of the building here, predetermined. I want it like this. I want to sink the building. No, you can't do it. You can't just do a surgery of the heart without understanding, that the blood is flowing through, it has to be stopped, and 20 other thousand things that need to be taken care of. But as architects, we'll just go in and cut out the heart and imagine what will happen. And that's what happens on almost every single project in the country. So we don't understand that I have to bring a road in here. And the road has to be connected to the level here. And the road needs to be connected to the level here. There has to be a particular gradient. And there is another landform that is already happening. And that if I did the basement here, the road will also go down. If the road goes down into the basement level minus 10 feet over here, the water along with this is also going to go. Along with this, water will go into the basement. Now this is a hard strata, basalt. Now, if I dig here, if we are in minus 10, how on the earth I'm going to take the water out from here? Because this is the lowest point, this is higher. If I have to take water, I have to cut into this strata. If I have to take wastewater, so we don't understand that our decision as an architect doesn't take into account all of this as part of the upfront planning process. It is independent. It's a very linear process that we learn in college. First, make the plan. The plan doesn't take into consideration many stuff. Then make the section elevation, then get the landscape architect to fill up the open spaces with nice looking plants. But we forget that there are so many other things that are as important or if not more important. Now, very simple, this is all very high. By the time I come here, it's very high. And if I had to go down over here, if I go then it will go very steeply. It's not going to work. Even if it goes very steeply, I'm going to cut into this whole site. So there are many consequences in which it should happen, at least in conjunction. So what is it? We'll go through what has happened on the site, and it happens. So we don't understand this. Some of us, through our training with Landscape Architect Association, begin to understand that the water is moving like this. So this particular building is placed over here. So there's a whole system. This is how the water is moving on this site. And we don't know where all we knew it because of our training, that water might tend to accumulate on surface here, and that because over the years it has been accumulated, there might be fissures and cracks. But the building people wanted to have one height of same height buildings everywhere. So this is just within the site, but we don't understand that water is coming from there, and it's going out in an existing pattern from somewhere. This is happening on the surface. It is penetrating and it is going into the gorge, about which we did not know. We only got to know because of the association with the geologist. Now, if I don't understand this, because my training as an architect doesn't allow me, I will put the form in whatever way I like, and primarily the view. And that is what it is. I will not even understand that it is so important to put it on the ridge and not in the valley. So consequently, we are making a lot of decisions on the site about which we are not trained to handle. So here you see what we start doing, and now we're telling our architects friends not to have very long buildings. The form should be generated based on the geology subsurface, especially in the Himalayas and everywhere we are realizing. Now imagine if the form of this building was like that, or I wanted one height of the building. If the form of this building was like this, what would happen to the water? The water that is coming from here cannot come here. So you change the whole pattern downstream. You will have to arrest the water. Then you are not even designed for the road. Now you have to cut so deep into a basalt. It'll take forever, increase the cost of the project. It will look ugly, and it is not probably even feasible. So we are designing in isolation, and it's time that we move out from that process. So we understood these, and after the first building was made, we said, we will tell you, just give us the footprint. But imagine, why shouldn't the footprint of each building be designed with respect to these systems? Why should the footprint of this and this be designed independent of the site? Anyway, so we picked up these footprints, and we understood this system, and then we ideally wanted the buildings to be on the ridges, but the architect said it is too close. We wanted to keep all of these low areas where the water would accumulate. Somehow we created form and geometry where the water can move. Because, very simply, even if it is not the surface water, what about the roof water? No architect No architect ever does a roof plan as part of the water system management design. So if this building is all one, how will you take these pipes water from this side? What will you going to do? Like this and like this. So the services guys eventually just give up. And as landscape architect, unlike 99% of them, I integrate this as part of the design process. So the form needs to be informed by many things and not independently. So this is eventually more or less how the form generated. But our limitation is the footprint is pre-decided. Even the levels are pre-decided. But because we went to the site with the senior most proprietor, whom we explained, we marked every single building and the plinth. And then these building plinths, because they wanted all of them of same plinth height, there's no logic to it. There's no reason for it. Not that they are interconnected. It's just the imagery that we are kind of seduced by. So we were able to kind of change these, heights and to, fragment the buildings. But with already predetermined, even the balconies were predetermined. They were hitting each other. Now, I'm not being critical of architects. I am an architect. We do architecture. But this is, and then these plinths were predetermined. How can you predetermine the plinth? This is what I face in every project. How can you predetermine the plinth without actually understanding the levels of the roads? Shouldn't the level of arrival here be determined? You can't fix this and expect to have already a predetermined relationship. I just want 3 steps. Now you want it like this, but this has not been taken into consideration as part of the design. And then with the road, there will be water from on the road, from this building, from there. So these are systems. They're all interconnected. That's all I'm trying to say. And that the independent decision should not be happening much like in a open heart surgery. This is literally open heart surgery. And if you look at patterns, there's a giveaway, So eventually, this is what we did because we are running short of time, and that's the kind of landscape. What I want to draw to the fact here is that all that you want to achieve, they all can be achieved. The view can be achieved. The character can be achieved. But if we don't do it together as a process from the beginning, then there is a huge cost in delays, in time, and eventually neither the architect makes money, nor the landscape architect, nor the consultant, and the client loses a lot of money. And in this project, the client lost a lot of money because it took him so much time to dig a basement, and every infrastructure is taking such a long time. And the drawings have to be done again and again and again. So this is what the site looked like. And if you look at, luckily we have Google Images, and there isn't a single project which I don't use it very, very intently to design. And you can see that this half is green. So that is telling a story. And this half was brown. This is what the building looks like. But what is really sad, for every single site in the country, if it is, this is almost 16-acre site, and this is the only amount of construction. but the entire site is finished and killed by how we handle construction. So what you saw in the beginning, we will see it further down. The soil that takes 500 years to happen, more so when there's only a thin soil cover, it's littered. It's littered with our construction material. Not just the organicity of the soil is finished, but the soil is dead forever. Now, a dead soil means what? A dead soil means because we handle the material in such a pathetic manner and the construction. So again and again and again, the question is, the site is an orphan site. There is no Mai Bap of the site. Who should be the prime architect should be the one who should be ensuring that the site is not finished. Who should it be? The PMC? And anybody's training, does it allow us to guarantee that this destruction is minimized? Why should the landscape architect, even 99% of them, will not go into this level of sensitivity? Because it's not taught in any of the landscape architecture programs in the country. So what happens when we do this littering? One, the amount of material that we dump on the side, we can't use all of it, whether it's sand, whether it's cement, or it's bajri. I would say 15% to 20% is wasted. The soil below it is dead and finished. What does a dead soil mean? A dead soil means that the top layer has to be removed and thrown away somewhere. Where will you throw it? New soil has to be brought in. There is no new soil available in the mountains of Himalayas or in these plateaus. There's no soil. So where does the soil come from? The soil will come from some lake bed where it is silted and accumulated. At the cost of what? Agriculture, or at the cost of what? Wetlands. So you have to clean this up. You have to transport it, bring it on the site. There is time, there is money, there is resources, there is delay, and it will take a lot of time for that to revegetate or to bring organic content and life into the soil, which is dead. The basic question is who should be the one who should be actually dealing it? And for me, it's a question we should all ask, or should it be the team, or is it a concern at all? And why is it not a concern? And I will take you now through the images of what happens to a site. It's very interesting to see. I will show you if we get a chance. I've put it in the layers below. Okay. Here I might be able to explain to you is that, it's very nice if we go to the site and understand that this part is all green and this part is all brown. This was also brown. We superimposed it, and there's a reason. So there's a reason, and so this is where, luckily, we built this part primarily because of the view this offered. And so this green part is more or less saved. This brown part, we kind of built on it. We'll create it into a forest, but that's my headache. You will see that the water, they did not want earlier the water to go into the gorge. So before it went to the gorge, they made a dike. And you can see that there's green here and it's all brown here. And that this is green. There's a reservoir. So the water, hence this is turned into a brown landscape, that is all green landscape. And this is where the silt is happening, and there is no silting, no new silt that comes in. So there are these patterns and stories embedded in the site, which we don't look at it. So our architect friends with whom we have been working for now 10, 15 years, some of them, they will not put their building on the site unless they ask us. We will tell them, but yet we still have certain difficulties, but each one of us is learning from one another. So this is what we design. And So what I have learned over time is to make these pits on the entire site to really understand what it is. In different areas on site, you will find the different traits at which water will percolate, different soil bed that you will get. And that's before we actually start to design. Because this is what happened, this is where the basement was made. And now, once you make the basement, this is what I was telling you. How will you carry the plumbing? Imagine 3 meters below, and you have to make three, starting here 4 meters below, go to 6 meters. This is the project site on which we were working before we had mapped the water system. So you can see without the training, what happens is that we were marking, putting the buildings in a particular way on the site. That particular way had a different rationale, but it didn't take into consideration many other rationales. One of the rationale was more important for us, soil and water, is that the water system was moving in a lot of places where the buildings were put. So once we put this system, this is the role of the landscape architect if they are earlier on. So the only rationale of putting this behind other things was the slope and that they don't cross each other in that sense. So what we're trying to tell you is that the climate is on a crisis. Architecture training is independent of any of these issues. It is not caught up. So trying to through this one workshop sensitize, and in March to June we'll be offering this so that people who are interested. My whole idea is that we create hundreds of very sensitive architects across the whole country to minimize and prevent the damage that is happening. So as a principle, if you take it down, is to have not to have very long building forms. Because they will choke the system, they'll break down the movement system. Very simple. If we have a long building form like this on the ground, how will you take the plumbing out? How will you take the water away from this? How will you take the water away from this? How will you direct the existing movement of water on the site? So the question what I'm trying to raise is that the form of the building, the location of the building, the footprint of the building cannot be done independently, should not be done independently. And there are certain principles that we must consider beyond planning for space, function, activity, and view. So the one major principle, we'll learn more of these through many examples in the workshop that we do. So even if the roof is one, there are issues. How will you bring all this roof water down? So hence we worked very closely with the architect and we opened up the building. So the form of the building is determined by other aspects. And when you use the role of the landscape architect properly, not just for planting and beautification, and to look at the site as a living system, forget the landscape architect. It's important to become sensitive ourselves. And you see the design of this whole system is to slow down the movement of the water. I'll just give you one example. The roof water, just clear this off. So the landscape is not designed just like that. I want a water body here. No, this roof water will come down here. This roof water will come. It'll get slowed down. It'll move slowly. It'll come here. All this water will come here. All this water will come here. And then it's integrated to become a feature of design. It is not a vestigial organ. The human body doesn't have any vestigial organ. All it has is one, the appendicitis. And imagine how much problem it creates. Yeah, our architectures become vestigial, putting stuff that is not required. It's like having one nose in front on the face and one in the back. Because it looks beautiful, it's subjective, but it's not functional. It's not required to be a problem. A cow with 5 legs. That's what we're doing. So this is how you integrate systems as part of an integrated system of design. And I think if one of the takeaways from this one little webinar is that if you look at the site as a body, a living system, constantly go back and check. There is no redundancy anywhere. Then we are getting in closer to bringing harmony about which we want. The second thing is if we are disturbing anything, and here you see the building is not up, the land is being stabilized completely and being brought back to life. So the form, geology as a generator, the form, soil as a generator, water as the generator, the form of the building, of the roof, of the structure, and whatever we disturb, how quickly can we fix it? And here are other examples of transformation of the site. Again, who is responsible for it? Who will take up the onus? Converted into this thicket forest in less than a year and a half, 2 years. But there are very few practices in the country, which are doing. So the more sensitive you become, over a period of time, each one of you learn and find your own ways of doing it. But the point one is how to become sensitive to these issues. And you see, the road is not tarmacked yet, but it is stabilized. But, you can see less than a year. And they are very different processes. But this has happened because we have spent on 5 years about, if I'm not exaggerating, more than 8 cumulative months on site. For me, it's about habitat creating, not about which tree to plant. Yet, we don't even know. We don't literally know. Nobody knows. Not even me. What is this that's required? And it's not disturbing the root system. It's also not about compacting it. It's not about changing the grade also. The tree will go into shock and die. And, we all understand. We'll take you very quickly. We'll show you. So there are countries which are practicing this. And there are a few individuals like me across the country who are like really wanting to share all that we have learned in the last 30 years with each one of you, so that you become much more sensitive, because I have learned it on my own. So what is it that we can do about soil and water? I'm just focusing today on soil. In my next one, I'll focus more on water. And before we begin our workshop series in March, what is it that we can do during the planning process? How do we engage and understand? Because about soils, there is hardly any expert in the whole country, who talks about urban soils or soils other than for agricultural purpose. There's no one. In some ways, we are opening up doors for new conversations in this country. How do you reuse the soil? How do you share the soil? How do you increase the permeability? How do you minimize compaction as a process during the entire site? How do you actually stockpile it? In every site we remove the site, and whenever there is little grass, we collect the seeds. And we train, like that laborer who made that, we trained the local guy who used to be on the site. He collects the grass seeds because grass seeds are not available in the entire country. So this is what I mean, that, we don't know. We are all nice people, sensitive people, but we don't know the processes. First, what damages we might be doing without actually understanding that we are damaging. We don't know how to fix it. See, this is what's happening. This is a photograph from like 2 weeks back of the whole site. 16-acre site. At the moment, you very little construction, but see the damage. What will I grow here? You know, can you imagine? Can you imagine how will life return here? Life was like this here or better. So these are trees that we planted early. But this doesn't have to be this mess. So there's no soil cover left. There's nothing left. I have to remove this and throw it. Where should I throw this? And anyways, I have so much extra of this rock. Well, how will I use it? The common sense would have been to make the building material, use it as a building material. How much can I use it in the landscape? So did we plan for all of this? Did we plan where to dump the material, where to store the material, what is going to come out of the site? How will I reuse it? What is the amount of material that will come out? And what will I do it? Or, none of this is part of the planning process before the building is designed. This is what's happening. You have to make these large trenches. And this is what's happening on the site. And believe me, if I don't scream, yell on the site, every site will turn into like this. This is what happens on a site. And it doesn't have to happen. And imagine, I'll show you, this is what's the condition of almost literally most of the sites in the country. And this is what I mean, that if you have to take wastewater or even rainwater to the lowest point, this is how much you have to dig. And on the other hand, we can understand the nature is so sensitive. If you just leave it, it starts to come back. But unfortunately, we will not be there to enjoy it. And we're running. So I will take extra 15 minutes and quickly go through. And this is where I have to start. After the soil is finished and damaged, that's the size of plants we get in this country. I don't get more than 30% of the native trees that I want. And they are not native to that place. They're native to other parts of the country. Now I have to start from this. I have to dump cow dung. I have to bring soil from somewhere else. There are these native grasses are all gone. And we all want native plants and all of that. We want it, but without realizing that we have kind of finished and killed it all. And as architects, we are doing it, So very quickly, this is the project that we have done, but, to start from this, to create rubble and destruction in every site and to bring back wildlife into this, it's huge amount of work. It takes huge amount of resources. Not always possible to do it, but how many of us are doing it? So the whole thing is, if we all become sensitive, then half of the problem is solved, that this level of destruction of the site, of the systems of the site, won't happen. I'll quickly take you through a master planning project, which was India as a representation. It was done with Studio Lotus at London Biennale last year, where we were supposed to do a comprehensive master plan. And we'll just take you through some of the things that we considered as part of the planning process. And at the end of we'll talk about it, and it'll be open for question and answers. The idea is not to, hurt, humiliate, or anything. It's just to share what I've learned so that in our project sites in future, we can prevent it. For every site, we take now drone image, because it'll pick up stuff that it's not picked up. And you can see, some of the isolated water bodies in the site, which we mapped, every single one, and all the wells are marked. So we try and understand a system that is existing. I can see it as a system, but maybe others can't. But the starting point is, are we mapping enough? And do we even know what to map? using this as a system, what are we looking for? Where is it that historically on this side, it's natural history, where did they do agriculture? Which means that's the most productive part. So now these are all how will the water move? It's coming from understanding what is the level here, what is the level here. Will I be able to get this on a gravity flow? You know, what is happening around the edges? These greens, whatever little greens, can I protect it? You know, so we are trying to pull out what is there on the site, not just the view. There's nothing, no talk about view. We're trying to map the assets. What are the different clay types, and then it's marked with, we don't have that kind of scientific information easily available in this country, yet we can go onto the site. The more site visits we make, we are better informed, because each one of us at the end of the day is a nice person who's concerned. It's just that we don't have enough tools and understanding about that. So once you mark that, what can you do. So there are other determinants to the form, placing, location. That's what we're trying to say. Let it not just be the view. And then we say, okay, this is what we will do. Then we add layer after layer. This will become each sector. The size of the sector will be so much, so much. People can walk through it. All of that is possible. Yeah. And then, what you saw, now you can see the outcome. A large community agrarian landscape integrated as part of the development, a whole water system that will not only act as a stormwater system, but it will become a recreational place. Yeah, different sizes of green, small then cluster level, and then the whole neighborhood level. You can walk. Here you can see how the buildings are put on the periphery. And that a child, unsupervised, can walk from anywhere within this place. Cycle, a very small child. And then there are different loops can be done. And that the movement system, all the principles that we want are possible to have. It is just that, we are in an emergency situation. Climate crisis is looming. And, I read so much that, we don't realize where other countries have reached and what conversations we are having about it. We're not having any conversations about these issues, So the whole act of doing this workshop is to empower each single architect. Planting, you plant five rows. This is the whole green system that you can plant what is buildable and non-buildable, whole green system, agrarian landscape, omelette landscape. And a lot of things went into planning and all this. Eventually we came up with this as a system for the. And this, conceptually at that level, we said, okay, zones in each one of these, water system, everything is integrated. So it's possible to have all that we want, scales of buildings, heights, urban design, all of that integrated, peripheral here, all of that is part of that system. Sizes of green, neighborhood, individual, hierarchy, Kevin Lynch, everything is possible. In fact, a much more greener and appreciable neighborhood design. I think that's the last slide. I'll stop here because we have 8:34 and I'm opening it up for any kind of discussions. The whole idea is that we share. I want to share everything that I know with as many people as possible in the country.